Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the TFT Perspective. Today, we are going to talk about misinformation and disinformation, especially when it comes to the Russo Ukrainian war, as well as in South Asia, how the world is amplifying misinformation and disinformation campaigns. Earlier this August, the Ukrainians launched an incursion in the Russian Kursk Oblast region, and initially they met with a lot of success. And in the Western media, things like that Putin was caught off guard and it was a complete shock for the Russian forces. All such news was being amplified all across different Western media outlets. So later onwards, now when we are getting closer to the end of August, things have turned completely upside down for the Ukrainians because the primary focus of the entire Kursk offensive or Kursk incursion, or whatever you want to call it, was to divert Russian forces, make them divert those forces that were operating in the Donbass region to come and, try to liberate the region that Ukrainians have so far captured inside the Kursk region. But as of today, right now, in the reports, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, Mr. General Sirsky, as well as Zelensky himself, have said that Russian forces did not take this bait, and the entire eastern front of the Ukrainians is about to collapse, especially since one small town, a junction which connects the Dnipro side and Zaporozhye side, is going to fall. Things are going to look completely different. So, in that domain, we are going to ask some specific questions. We have with us Mr. Vakar K. Korvi. Sir, from headlines like, Putin humiliated, scared, shocked, and now that Russians haven't taken the bait, what was the end goal for the Western media or West itself during and after the Kursk invasion, whatever happened later?
I think before that, we just highlight the difference between misinformation and disinformation because there's a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think,
Sure.
discussion, but by and large, people mix it. I think it's only related to the intent. Misinformation is, let's say, there is some information that you receive and you pass it without verification, not with the intent to harm or create chaos or, let's say, mislead somebody. But still, it will harm because if you are becoming part of, the echo chamber, and you're just passing it on, which is normal, in most of the societies, it has some damaging effect. But disinformation is a deliberate effort where you feed false information with an objective. It's either to malign somebody or to create chaos or let's say to achieve some political objective. So that's what's the difference. But both combined actually create an impact. For instance, if there is an echo chamber where there is a guy who is initiating disinformation and rest of people deliberately or without any intent are doing it, so it's in any case going to spread. You'll feel the numbers, you'll feel it.
Is it like another word for propaganda, or disinformation has an entirely different domain?
It's part of the propaganda. Basically, both will be part of propaganda. One is with the intent, the other is without intent. Now, coming
Hmm.
to, I think, Russia-Ukraine conflict or war, it's almost going to complete 2 years in coming February.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you look at strategies adopted on both sides, so right from the outset, the Ukrainians had outsourced the war, including the command. And you never do it. When you're defending your country, you should not be outsourced. It means that they had a couple of headquarters who would guide them or prod them. So definitely they had Eastern Europe, and then you had NATO, and then of course there were some commands coming from the American military leadership. So it means there were 3 or 4 different headquarters who were controlling the
Hmm.
war. So it was bound to happen that war conduct of war will be very very messy, and that's why they suffered. So if you look at the overall area which was captured by the Russians so far, it's almost 1/5 of Ukrainian territory if you include Crimea, which
Maybe
was
it's one fourth now.
yeah, maybe it's,
Hmm.
and in terms of impact, in terms of economy, I think it's more than $1 trillion loss already, and still people are looking for trying to define victory, and this is, I think, been an absurd debate in the West. Unfortunately, so far, Western media has suppressed the real news which is coming. So they are looking for silver bullets. They are
Hmm.
looking for magic weapon system, and this also happened during I think if you look at the end of Second World War. how Hitler's Nazi propagandists like Goebbels
Yeah,
were
during the Normandy landing, I remember that they used to use radio stations to amplify propaganda like the New York City has fallen and our grand forces have entered and taken the Statue of Liberty as well.
yeah. So something like that. Now let's suppose this was a deliberate offensive effort by Ukraine.
Mhm.
Looking at from military angle, that we call it a repost.
Mm.
As you mentioned, that if the aim is that you launch an offensive across into enemy's territory, so that he recoils from another sector and sends those forces and they destroy them. So this is basically a repost.
Mm.
It is part of the strategy. It is not really a counteroffensive, but now you are getting into going across the enemy lines and trying to force a recoil. This is a strategy. But look at what they've put in. Six brigades. I mean, six
Mhm.
brigades, if you look at the area, we have the maps also. I am sure we're going to show them that the area captured is very small, maybe 1,200 square kilometers. And within that, they have, let's say, shoved about six brigades. And they are highly trained with best equipment. And what did they achieve? So if the commander in chief is saying that they have not been able to achieve the objective, so that is the, I think, confirmation of the failure, that yes, they could not, because now Russia had two three options. One was to immediately launch a counter attack and restore the situation.
Mhm.
The other is that let them come in, stretch them, then start blocking, and meanwhile continue their offensive from the Donbas region towards the Dnieper river, which gradually probably may be the objective, but slowly and steadily, and then wrap it up
Mm.
through a two-pronged counteroffensive, and maybe pocket whatever is coming.
Mm.
So if now this was projected, in a very big manner in I think last 2 weeks we've been listening. This offensive is gone and Putin has failed and Russian military has failed. So this is, I think, disinformation. And look at the cost that they're going to pay.
Mhm.
Already they have lost more than 500,000 officers and soldiers. So, and include these, I think, six brigades. So these are, I think, 20 to 30,000 people are in. Best equipment is there. A lot of assets like HIMARS and tanks and artillery and everything is gone in. Now, when these are disrupted, the news are coming. Like they have, I think, they've been able to destroy a lot of military equipment already.
Yeah,
Use them.
definitely.
So that's where Ukraine is going to suffer. And if you look at basically what is the thing which is coming out, as you mentioned, the talk of 50 to 60 billion dollars which were promised by European Union
Mhm.
and
Now
so
from G7 countries
from G7
in
countries. Sorry,
June. Yeah.
yeah. So it means maybe Zelensky is basically trading people or soldiers for money, and that money is definitely needed.
He said that now you have to give this unconditionally without any, because previously the G7 said that you need to improve the infrastructure or after war recovery efforts. In that domain, they were going to give that $50 billion package at the end of this year. But since things are heating up, and now I've also heard that Council of NATO members have now held an emergency meeting with Ukraine today to discuss the Eastern Front and its collapse.
Yeah, and if you look at geography, so Kursk, the incursion up to I think Sudza from
Mm,
Sumy,
yes.
and this is almost northwest of Belgorod.
Mhm.
So definitely, it was a new area where the Russians did not launch a major offensive in
Mhm.
recent past. And down below you look at Luhansk, Donbass, Donetsk, and Mariupol, Melitopol, going right up
Zaporozhye,
to
yeah.
Kharkiv. So like a wall that they have captured, and the offensive which is now projected towards Pokrovsk.
Bokrovsk, yes.
Pokrovsk is again very very strategic because if they get hold of it, so it means that the big communication hub is going to be captured, and just like Bakhmut, it was
Yes.
intense fighting, and the latest situation indicates that from Donetsk they are advancing, and some reports suggest they're already southwest of it.
Yes.
So they
Very
are
close. We're just 2 kilometers away from it now.
2 kilometers away from there. Now, if this falls, so it means it's going to become a big revolving door. Then now you have Russians, forces advancing toward the Dnieper River, and from the north you have this Ukrainian offensive which is stuck up.
Hmm.
They have an option to now get out. I don't know how the Russians are going to allow them
Exactly.
because, and when they are trapped, so this was the strategic reserve they had, like two division size force or mechanized division. This is now consumed. Maybe this could have been applied because if you are fighting a defensive, definitely there should be an offensive design, but depends at what do you have in your kitty. It could have been better utilized for defense of Pakros, but now they don't have, I think, any major strategic reserve. So it could actually, end up, as you mentioned, collapse of the
Yeah,
Eastern Front.
the
But
entire
let's see
Eastern
how it
Front.
figures out. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is very surprising when it comes to disinformation and such campaigns. Another interesting point I wanted to raise over here was that uh, does this also impact the general population in a region and judgments, just like what we heard from the western side that Putin has been humiliated. Do they think that there's going to be a reaction from the common folk at that time, that why our forces are not trying to defend the borders? We had seen that back during the 2019 events of small scale aviation skirmish between India and Pakistan, and it was blown hugely out of proportion. Just one single pilot was captured, and the Indian media just propagated as if they had lost the war.
Yeah, I think one thing people should know, that war is not, TikTok,
Hmm.
or it's not, one day affair. Even if you look at this war, nobody projected that's going to spread over. Now we're going to complete 2 years. I think, a very long war as far as the modern times are concerned. Of course, there have been wars like Iran, Iraq, but between two very modern armies, this is one of the longest wars which is happening. So my advice to all of them will be that we should look at the end objective or the end state of the war. There will be battles, there will be losses, and there will be gains. But trying to make it's very easy nowadays because of social media and the way youth or the people look at events. Because the life of news is also, I think, less than now 48 hours. It's come into literally hours. If there's a breaking news or something, it's hardly going to
I think
last
it's
for
seconds now.
maybe,
Ma-
maybe. So it means that you can bluff the other side, you can create an impact, but it's not long lasting, because ultimately the war is going to decide the fate of nations. So I'm sure people in the Western media are looking at it, but somehow they've put the Western audience, I would say, into addiction phase. That whatever they say, they think that they're going to believe it. But mind you, if you look at, I've discussed with a lot of European friends in certain forums, that people don't now listen to what BBC or CNN says.
yeah.
They have their mobile phones, they have their own source of information, they have their own blogs to watch, discussion forums, and Defense Politics Asia is one which has done a lot of, I think, objective analysis. So they would like to listen to that, and I've seen people sitting for hours, 5 or 6 hours, just listening to one, broadcast or podcast or discussion. So that's, I think, the main area to actually focus. So all told, let's see what's the final result. But I feel that Western media has pushed or zombified the Western population to believe in their narrative, and now I think people are not buying it anymore.
And
They will
talk,
look at the
yeah,
reality.
talking about believing in narratives, back in South Asia, we have seen changes happening inside Bangladesh. And India, being a hated neighbor, always tended to support the previous regime. But the sudden shift in policy, especially Mr. Modi's visit to Ukraine back in Kiev, uh, some sort of humiliation or any kind of remorse. It was a surprise visit, but people were expecting it. What do you think after such a big debacle, after giving Mr. Moody the typical
56-inch chest.
56 inch chest and everything? Now the media is trying to portray this visit as very key and important to reignite the flames with the West, to integrate Indian polity and Indian foreign policy into this. Uh, why create a macho face at first and then completely opposite later onwards?
I think it has been something to do with Moody's policy also.
Hmm.
One is Vishwaguru.
Yeah.
They have the solution to all the global problems, and just trying to appear at places where they are not required to.
Mm.
If you look at the comments, and I think I was looking at an interview by Karan Thapar in The Wire, and Mr. Kamal Sibal was there, who is a very, I think, renowned retired bureaucrat. He's been in the Foreign Office of India. And Mr. Kamal Sibal said that the visit was humiliating, disgusting what the Ukrainian did to Modi. It was most improper, disrespectful, and rude. The comments passed by Zelensky, and mind you, Moody had traveled by train from Poland too,
Yeah.
and he was so scared to fly actually.
Yeah.
So they said, "Okay, you can come by train." I think it took 20 hours to reach Kiev, and then 20 hours going back. What a waste of time and resource. And he went with a complete, team of, Godi media,
Yeah.
who and you've seen the question answer how they were
Yeah.
planting. Yeah,
They were trying to divert the entire war narrative to
yeah.
Israel and Palestine
Yeah,
issue.
and Karan Thapar was, I think, very sarcastic when he said that Modi had not even left Ukrainian soil, you know,
Hmm.
and we had a presser by President Zelensky, and he was, I think, very very clear from Ukrainian point of view
Yeah.
that this so-called
Not putting eggs in everybody's basket.
yeah, yeah. So this neutrality and balancing act should stop, and India has to decide. And India has a problem because they are having their, I think, foot in three boats. You have definitely Indo-Pacific, so they think they are darling of the West. Then they are in BRICS, which is definitely an anti-Western bloc, and then they are part of, let's say, the SCO, which is more to do with Eurasia. And these three blocks have definitely different diverging objectives. So it is bound to let's say boomerang on his face. And the way I think he was humiliated,
Hmm.
and because I think Zelensky even mentioned, he passed very derogatory remarks about President Putin, which should not be. But I think they were Ukrainians were undermining Modi, and as Kamal Sibal said that they were trying to dictate the policy to Vishwaguru. So I think you should not have done it. And then look at the way Indian media initially, before the visit, was projecting it. The Vishwaguru is going there, and he's going to solve all the problems. There's going to peace. And next day, you look at what Russia has done to India. What message they communicated was they hit Ukrainians very hard, I think, for last 2 days.
Yes,
And 60% of Ukraine is without power.
definitely.
So that was the kind of response.
Hmm.
So I think this has been a failure as far as India is concerned, and even their own people are saying it. That was disgraceful for
Yeah,
Mr.
during the live presser on over social media and different Indian media platforms, a lot of people were commenting that India is on the Russian side. Why are we even here?
Yeah, it
A
was
lot of
after
people were
it was
saying it.
after remarks by Ukrainian president. That's the, I think, typical bania,
Uh-huh.
that you would like to chide people and then chide the countries and leadership till the time it's going India's way. It's all hunky dory, but the moment there is some negative remark, then you start basically getting frustrated. Um, but I think I should ask Vishwaguru one thing, that you can't solve problems in South Asia. You have very bad relations every neighbor.
Hmm.
Uh, China, Pakistan, we've done it, I think, in the last podcast also. It's a hostile relationship with India
Yes.
because of the wars and conflict and whatever I would say, misunderstanding. And then you have smaller countries as part of the Indira doctrine. You were supposed to have, one was their influence of Indian foreign policy. The other was to basically, pull them. If you look at India's, a new alliance, they tried to work it out. I think within SAARC, it was to have these smaller countries like Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, uh, then Sri Lanka, and to some extent, I think Maldives. And now you have India out movement almost going on all these countries. Maldives threw them out. Then we had this movement happening in Bangladesh. Now we heard that even in Nepal is not happy.
Hmm.
Bhutan is, dealing with China directly. So you can't solve problems in South Asia, and now you go all the way, to Ukraine and try to, become Vishwaguru and help other countries solve their problems. So I think they should know what are their limitations. They are not a superpower,
Yeah.
but somehow the way they were projected, I think it's been very very humiliating for Mr. Modi and Indian Ministry of External Affairs.
Yeah. Last question coming closer to home. We had terror attacks inside the province of Balochistan within Pakistan. And there were a lot of casualties, obviously, and a lot of civilian laborers were also killed in this. A lot of military installations were also attacked. So, in that domain, later onwards, there was this spread of disinformation campaign being launched within Pakistan, outside Pakistan as well, especially when it comes to demoralizing the troops, or even create ethnicity based hatred between provinces. So it was very unfortunate that a lot of people within Pakistan also participated in it, and showed their anger and distrust towards a particular community, which is the Baloch. So, in that domain, what message are we trying to communicate with the Pakistani youth, and how can we get out of this, especially when war against terror has now almost entered its last year? Terrorist cells are just breathing their last air, and soon it will be completely over. So, why do we have to project such disinformation from either from hostile agencies or from within Pakistan as well?
I think one is that it's become very easy to spread disinformation. And if you look at Indian media,
Hmm.
because, and then I'll come to, within Pakistan and Pakistani, some of people in Pakistani diaspora, not all of them, but some of them. India was actually warming it up even before 26th August that there is a civil war which is taking place. And this has been their narrative. Even Moody, I think, said it from Red Force Rampart.
Hmm.
And I'm getting a call from our Bloch brothers and all that.
Yes.
I think we should look at what the Chief Minister of Balochistan said, Mr. Sarwaz Bukti, that those who were martyred were all Pakistanis. There was no Baloch or Punjabi or Pashtun. They were Pakistanis. And the way these terrorists have hit the innocent people, the soft target, indicates their frustration. So we have to
Hmm.
beat that. Yes, there were, I think, some, I would say, unfortunate messaging on Twitter, especially regarding, trying to create a cleavage between, let's say, Baloch and Punjabis or Baloch and Pashtuns. But I feel that there were hostile, agents in that.
Hmm.
Maybe somebody did it, from, let's say, some of the media houses. But this was picked up and they tried to accentuate. But I think later on it was clarified. Our appeal is also that we are all one. And Pakistan, Punjab has a big heart. Balochistan is definitely, its progress is linked to Pakistan and vice versa. Balochistan grows, Pakistan will grow. And Baloch youth understands it. They have an elected government. If there are any grievances, there are, I think, 1,500 to 2,000 militant cadres, especially if you look at BLA and Majid Brigade, all told.
Hmm.
And these will be sorted out now.
Yeah.
Look at what Marang Baloch did. I call it basically Rangbaz, Khatun. And she went to Norway, got funding, then came back. And then she came up with a very absurd, narrative of missing person.
Yeah.
Uh, and if you look at the figures, at time people forget. I would say that there should be zero missing person in Pakistan. 2,290, that's the total figure. Registered missing persons, out of which now most of these have been resolved also. Just looking at India, is 3,70,000 missing person. Only in occupied Kashmir, there are 14,000 kids who are missing for last, I think, 5 years now. In US, you will find on the average 600,000 missing persons every year for whatever reasons.
Hmm.
I'm not saying they are picked up by agencies, but maybe some are picked up by them. But for various reasons. And 100,000 will never be traced.
Yeah.
This is from the website of Department of Justice. UK, you go to Iran, you go to India, you go to any other country. So I would say Pakistani state is a very human state if you compare it with
Hmm.
the figures there. Even look at crime control and all that. But here, this is, projected out of proportion. So this information was there. India was trying to show that probably, there were hundreds of, Pakistan Army soldiers and officers killed. Whereas we know that mainly it was civilians and some who were fighting the terrorists. Even in Tira Valley, I think they had a big success. The Pakistani military and Frontier Corps, they eliminated, I think, 25 to 30
Yeah.
Khawarij
Hmm.
recently. And as you said, that inshallah this year will be the end of at least this wave of terrorism, and hopefully by 2025 we're going to wrap it up. But disinformation, it worked in London riots, how one tweet had triggered. So people should understand it. Unfortunately, there are commentators from London, maybe dissident Pakistanis, so-called dissident Pakistanis, but I call them digital, thugs who are sitting in London or New York or Canada, and they are trying to comment as they are sitting in Quetta or Lahore.
Yeah.
And they are there for last 2-3 years, don't have any information, so based on hearsay, and Indian media then resonates it. So I'm sure people understand it, and gradually this propaganda is going to fail. But all told, there is a need. Already we have an act, on information disinformation. People should be educated.
It needs to be
You should be
implemented.
educated, and things should be. And definitely, we look at freedom of expression and all that. We know the case of arrest of basically Mr. Pavel Durov, the chief of Telegram. We know it, that what is actual freedom of expression.
Yeah.
So they say that there were a lot of some illegal thing going on. Main thing is that Telegram has now become a platform where a lot of information and
Alternate
groups are
view.
alternate views there,
Hmm.
and you can't do anything about it. Yes, you can form very large groups. I was looking at that in WhatsApp. You can have about 1,000 members in a chat group. In Telegram, allows 200,000. It's a very large group. So
Hmm.
maybe it has some political angle. But this has been happening for number of years. And Mr. Durov was even not very comfortable with the Russian establishment. And now in France, he has been arrested on, I think, flimsy charges. So that's the total. And we saw somebody selling illegal arms on Twitter.
Yeah.
So nobody is going to ask Mr. Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it for today, folks. Please do leave a like and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much for watching us. Bye bye.